All right, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, the 29th of November. So that means today is day 68, which means we have 12 days left. I'm going to go over some more stuff on this database project today and tomorrow, and we'll see where we are right then and there. Right now, my idea is I'm probably going to make both Thursday and Friday lab periods. And the reason for that is what's shown down here, and that is part one of this database project is due Sunday by midnight, and that'll give you time to work on it. All right, basically, I'm asking you to replicate what I'm doing. Now, there have been people who have told me that they are having some problems with either the download or what happens after the download when you download SQL Server Management Studio. All right. If you're having problems of any kind, I don't mean to underplay this, but or understate this, but it is your responsibility to get a hold of me and let me know so we can work together on that. But what you should be able to do right now is to come in here and under Microsoft. Now, if you've got the server tools and it's not working, you do need to have Microsoft SQL Server on your machine as well. And you should have had that already because I believe that's one of the things that we installed at the beginning of the semester. But when you go to your server tools and you bring up the Server Management Studio, it should, repeat this, should come up with something in there that looks like this. It may not, it may be exactly like this. It may look different. Now, your username that's down here, of course, that's going to be different. All right. Because, yours isn't going to be desktop with JP Scott on it, probably. All right. But once you've done that and you connect, okay, then you should be able to get in here. Now, I'm going to repeat some of the stuff that I did yesterday. And not to confuse anyone, but what I want you to understand is, some of the problems, etc., that we went through yesterday. All right. Now, let's see. Part of them were my own doing, and I apologize for that, but I've made the decision, be it right, wrong, good, bad, whatever, that I'm going to kind of be doing this. I've got a bunch of steps written out for the stuff I want to go through every day, but I'm doing it with you. And the reason that I'm doing it with you is probably the mistakes that I make are probably going to be the mistakes that you're going to make. So what we did yesterday, and you should have been sent this yesterday, late yesterday morning, it was called updated, Garth Records updated.txt. This is a copy of, this is known as the database schema for this table. And I'm going to show you exactly what we do with that in just a minute. But we said we're going to have two tables in here. The first is an album table. And as you can see, it's got an ID, which is a primary key, will automatically, when you see identity here, that means the same thing as auto increment. It says start with number one and add one every time. All right. And we're giving the primary key a name, PK album ID. Then every album has a name, and this is a variable length field. Okay. Up to 100. You notice an ints in here, we don't put numbers. It doesn't like that in SQL Server. We've got an album artist, which again is a variable length up to 100 characters, a year, which is an integer, a description, which is a text. Now, the difference between a varchar and text is typically when you use a varchar, it's something that could fit onto one line, like one line of a text box or whatever. But when you use text, it's typically something you'd put into like a multi-line text box. That's the distinction between the two. All right. And then we had the album URL, and you can see I made that a bit bigger, maybe even bigger than it had to be. All right. Then we came in here, and I'm going to shrink this down a little so you can see more of it. All right. And I realize it's a little bit hard to see, but you'll notice that I left off on here. I left off the number for the album ID. And I left that number off because, again, this is an identity field. So it's automatically going to be put in there for us. So this album, where it says album name, that is what you see in this first column here. Garth Brooks, No Fences, Rope in the Wind, etc. All of those. The album artist, that's Garth Brooks every time except for one, which was Chris Gaines, which really is Garth Brooks. That's another story. The album year, that's everything you see in this column. And I put these in chronological order. Whether that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, to be honest with you, doesn't matter. It's just the way I did it. It made sense to do it that way. Garth has 15 albums that were listed here, and I put them in there in chronological order. Then we have the description. Again, that's a text field, and that's this big long thing right here. All right. And then finally, we have the URL, which is, again, a fairly long thing in here. All right. So again, I want to go back and I want to review one more time. Now I'm going to make, basically, for lack of better words, I'm going to create a garbage database right now. All right. This is our second page. Okay. This is our home page. And we'll go on from there in just a moment. But I'm going to go over here. Normally here we have our toolbox. You already know this. All right, we pin that in there. We've got our toolbox. But you can also put in there, I can also view and say, where is it? I don't remember. I always forget which one it is in here. SQL Server Object Explorer, I believe. Maybe it is, but we'll find it in a minute anyway. All right, so when I look in there, you'll notice one of these says local DB, everything that you saw when we started there. All right, and if I open that and I open up databases, one of the things that's in there is Garth DB. I want you to call your database Garth DB just like I did. I want you to use the same names, and the reason for that is when I grade your assignments, I won't have to go in and be changing the names of everything around to try to get things to work. All right. Now, even though I've already got a Garth DB in there and it works, I'm going to recreate it and just call it Garth, just so one more time we can go through the steps you should be going through when you're doing this. So once you've got this up, you go up to databases, you right mouse click, and you choose add new database. All right. And it asks for a name. Now, this is a little different than the way that I did it yesterday. So let's go back. Let's do it, just to show you. If I come in here and type in Garth, how about Garth Brooks DB? And I hit OK, and I'm going to grab this. And I click OK. There's Garth Brooks DB, so it made it. So this is one way that I can do this. Let's talk quickly about the other way that we can do this. So I'm going to remove this Garth Brooks DB that I just made. See, there's no tables in there, etc. So I'm just going to remove it. Okay, delete Garth Brooks DB, yes, and it's gone. That's fine. All right, but I want to come back in. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. I'm going to even close my SQL Server Explorer. All right. In fact, let's not close it. Let's do it right from here. So I'll close it. I'm going to go through all the steps one more time. So if you come in here and you click on here and you go down, you have to have, to my knowledge, Microsoft SQL Server 2019 on your machine. And again, we should have that because I believe that at the beginning of the semester, when we did all of the, at the beginning of the semester, when we did all of the installs, all right, that should have been one of the things that we installed at that time. But you have to come in and add the Microsoft Server Tools, I guess it is. But if you go underneath there, all right, there's Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. Now, I believe the newest is 19 and I've got 18. Either will work. But if I click on this, again, you've seen this already before. So if I click on this just like I'm doing, and I click connect, it brings it up like this. So this is the other way that I can bring it up. Again, be it good, bad, or indifferent, there's a bunch of ways in here of doing the same thing. Here are my databases. And again, you see there's Garth DB, but I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to make another Garth Brooks database. So I'm going to right mouse click on databases. Again, notice there's nothing. Let's just call it, well, there's a Garth DB and there's a GD in there. I don't even know what that GD is. Well, this is something I did a year ago. All right. We were working with a dental office. But I'm going to come in here and create a new database. I'm just going to call it Garth Brooks. So I'm going to right mouse click and choose new database. The interface here is a little bit different, as you can see from doing it the other way. But I'm going to just come in here and type in Garth Brooks, just like that, and then just click OK. And then immediately you see it right here. If for some reason it doesn't show immediately there, which is possible, it shouldn't happen, but if that does happen, if it doesn't show, you go up to here and you click that refresh, and then it should show in here. So now I've got that, but I don't have any tables in here. All right, I have no tables, etc., that I've created. Now there's two ways of doing this. All right, yesterday I showed you one way. Now I'm going to show you the harder way. So I could click on table here and do a new table, and then come in here and put in all of that information that I showed you from up here. So I could go in and I could say album ID, I could make it an integer, I could make it a primary key, etc., then album name. We could do it like that. And there's absolutely no problem doing it like that. If you were doing it from scratch, that's probably the way that you would do it. Since I gave you the information already, I think it's much easier to highlight this. Again, this is called the schema, and I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to close this. I don't need this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my database right here where it says Garth Brooks. Okay, right there. I'm going to right mouse click on it and I'm going to choose new query. And then this new query dialog box comes up right here. Then I'm going to paste in that schema. Now, it is okay, because it's kind of hard to see all this, that you can separate this stuff over multiple lines like that. That's totally fine to do that. But this is the same schema that I showed you before. And I also just showed you there were no tables in here. But now when I put this in, this is a command. This is a create table command. All right. And if I click the execute button that's right here, it says commands completed successfully. And if I go back to my tables here, and again, I might have to refresh, but if I go back to tables, there's my DBO albums table. There's nothing in it yet. It's empty. Now I can remove this. And I can, if I want to, even remove this. Now, the other thing I can do, I'm not going to, but if I wanted to type in all 15 of these records manually, I could right mouse click on here and choose, where is it? It's right mouse click and I could go to tables. Let's see if we can look at some of the stuff that's in here. I'm going to go to tables and design and notice what just got built for me. All right, so all that stuff is in there. Okay, and I believe if I say edit top 200 rows, I can now start putting in data if I want to. I don't want to do that right now, not from here, even though I could do this. Even though I could, I don't want to do this. All right, so I'm going to get rid of that one. I don't need it. And again, I'm going to right mouse click on the name of my database, and I'm going to choose new query. Then I'm going to go and grab these 15 albums that are right here, highlight all those lines. So on here, it's, previously I highlighted lines 1 to 8. Now I'm highlighting lines 10 through 27. Again, I'm going to copy them to the clipboard, and I'm going to come back here and I'm going to paste that in here. And just like what was done before, for some reason it's giving me errors here, but don't let that bother you. One thing you cannot do is inside of single quotes, you can't put in another single quote. Notice what happens. It turned all that stuff black. See, well, but I really want to. I believe that if you put a backslash in, then you can put in a single quote. All right, but it doesn't even seem to like that, so I just took any backslashes out. So this should put in those 15 records full of information. Should do that. And again, to run that, execute it, I click the green button that says execute, and it says 15 rows affected. That's a good thing. So I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to make this a lot bigger. And I'm going to come up and I'm going to type right here. This is totally case insensitive. Select star from albums. And I'm going to click execute again to run it. And there are my 15 albums right there. Notice again, since we put it in with the identity field that we told it to start by 1 and go up by 1 every time, it goes 1 to 15. So that's in there. The album, that's followed by the album names, followed by the album artist, followed by the album year, followed by that description, and we can push that way out if you want to, followed by the record's URL, which again, we can push that out if we want to. So that's how we brought in the first table. All right, I'm going to quickly remove that, and I'm going to do the same thing with the other table. Now, this other table, we haven't done anything at all with it yet. We will be doing some stuff with it. All right, I don't know if we'll get to it today, tomorrow, or whenever. This table is set up. In fact, let me see. I don't know if I can get this to come up on here or not. I'm going to actually go back for just a second, and I'm going to bring up our tool. Inside of PHP MyAdmin. All right. And I don't know if this is going to work or not. I think it is, but we'll see in just a moment. So I've got this database. It's the same one, but it's called GB for Garth Brooks. All right. And let's see if I go to more and designer. That's what I want. Good. These are our two tables. I hate working with this thing. It's such a pain in the butt to move the stuff around in here. There's one. Trying to move this other one up, and for some reason it's not being very receptive to being moved. There. So here's our two tables that we have in here. All right. And you'll notice that what we have in here, all right, is, let's see, I've got song ID and album ID. I don't know if I goofed that up or what, so let's look. Okay, well, for some reason that one should be called album ID and it's not. But the point is this. Let's see if I can even change the name of that. And of course, it's not letting me. Yeah, that's okay. But what I'm trying to show you, not well, but what I'm trying to show you is this. Let's see, can I get back to there? Let's close this. Go back again to more. Let's go back to GB and more and designer. Come on. There we go. All right. But what I'm trying to show you here is the fact that these are the two tables that indeed we are working with. All right. We have a songs table and we have an albums table. And it's very hard to see, but this right here, it's actually called crow's foot. This one really typically is over here. All right. This is a one-to-many relationship. So every one album has one-to-many songs in it. But every song belongs to only one album. Now, you can argue and say, well, yeah, but it's possible if you have a greatest hits album. I get all that stuff. All right. But what I'm trying to show you here, and let's just go back to where we were, is this second table is going to allow us to combine information from the two tables. And the reason for that is we've got an album ID in this field, and we've got an album ID in this field. I should say we've got an album ID in this table, and we've got an album ID in this table. So this is our songs table. Every song is associated with an album, and that's the album ID. Every song has a number in that album. Every song has a name, and every song has a duration. Now you can see that album ID is an int, so is song number, whereas song name and song duration are both variable length strings. Then we're telling it we've got what's referred to as a composite or a concatenated primary key. So it's a combination of both of these. So you'll notice 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, all the way to 110. So that's everything that starts with a 1, that's album 1, and these are the 10 songs that are in there. This is album 2, and there's the 10 songs in there. There's album 3 and the 10 songs in there, etc. All right. There are 254 records, I believe, in this second table, in the 15 albums. And that's because one of these that's in here, and I don't remember which one it is, but one of these, I don't know if one of these albums, it's down towards the bottom here, has got 50 or 60 or more songs in it. All right. But if I come in and do the same thing now, so in other words, I'm going to come up here, I'm going to grab, I've got all my album stuff in here. So I'm going to grab the schema that's right there. I'm going to grab that schema, copy it to the clipboard. Then I'm going to go back into here and I'm going to paste that in here. Don't worry that this stuff is here. It'll be cleared out in just a moment. So I can move this down now a little bit. There we go. So again, we've got all this. Now this says it's referencing albums and it doesn't like that name for some reason, but I don't know why. But if I do come in here and run the command by clicking execute, it says command completed successfully. It doesn't show the table here, but when I refresh and I go back to tables, now I've got an albums table and a songs table. So they are both in there. I'm again going to come in and I'm going to remove this and I'm going to remove this. So I'm starting with a blank slate here, so to speak. All right. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to grab all 254 of these songs that are in here. There they are. Copy them to the clipboard and notice the syntax for this. Insert into table name, then the album ID, which is this, the song number, which is this, the song name, which is this, and the song duration, which is this. And even though that song duration is an integer value, I made it a string because that's how they showed it on the website where I got all this information from. All right. So I'm going to come back into here. All right. And I'm just going to paste this in. Okay. And then I'm going to run it by clicking execute, and it says 254 rows affected. So in other words, I should have all those in there. So again, if I come in there just like I showed you previously, but if I come in here now and say select star from songs, and I click execute, there's all my song information. All 254 of those songs are now in here. All right. What we want to be able to do eventually is we want to be able to come in here and run queries where we can combine information from both of the tables. I don't want to get into that right now. All right. So now I don't need this anymore. This was just, again, and I know we'd already done it. So it's going to say, do I want to save this? No. All right. But I've got this Garth Brooks database. I already have my Garth DB database, which has the same things in it. So I'm going to close this and just tell it to delete it. Now, it may come back and give me an error and tell me it doesn't want to delete it. It's okay if it does that. All right. And if it does delete it, that's good too. Either way is fine. All right. So we did that yesterday. And just like if you're having problems installing the software, and it doesn't like it, but whatever. All right. If you're having problems installing the software, I told you to get a hold of me. If these don't work, if you go in and you say, hey, I think I'm running the commands the way you told me to, but stuff just isn't working, you have to let me know. And again, I don't know any other way to say it than to say this. 12 days after today, 3 more days this week, 5 the next week, 4 the next week, and the class is over. All right. And I am asking that people try to have their work in again by 2 weeks from tomorrow. All work will be in 2 weeks from tomorrow. All right. That way, if for any reason I've got problems with your work, it gives me a day that I can contact you. What I've had happen in the past is somebody will send me something at midnight on, on the last day of class, and then there's problems with it. It's incomplete or whatever. Then I spend the next day trying to track them down. I have to have grades in by noon. And if they're working at a job where they can't get back to me, then what am I supposed to do? I don't want to be put in that situation. I don't want to put students in that situation. All right. So this is again what we did yesterday. So I'm going to come back to my program here. All right. And one thing that I did yesterday, it wasn't a big thing, but I wanted to make sure you saw it. And that was I highlighted each one of these 15 album covers that you see right here. Each one of these, not this one, but these 15. Then I went down, they're all picture boxes. And I went down to the size mode and I chose zoom. I want to show you the difference because originally it just said normal. So when you ran it, it didn't look very good. All right. I mean, here you can't even see anything. Here Garth is pretty much cut off. Here it doesn't look very good. Here's part of his hat. That just doesn't look good. But you'll notice that if I come back again with all of these highlighted and I change the size mode from normal, I should say, to zoom, and then I run it again, this looks a lot more professional. And again, one of the things I'm shooting for is I'm hoping you're going to want to take this project and put it into your portfolio. All right. Now it's going to be a little bit hinky if you try doing that because anybody who works on it is going to need the database connection, etc. But at least you'll be able to put this in there. All right. Okay. So that's kind of where we did all that yesterday. All right. Then let's talk about the other stuff that we did yesterday. Okay. When you go to the main page, we went and we added in this album search button that right now does nothing. All right. And we took the load data, which was over here, and we took the splash screen that was over here, and we moved them up here. And the reason that we did that is in not too long of a time, what we're going to do is we're going to come in and right here, we want to be able to add another picture box so that when you load the data like this, if you chose beyond this, what is it, beyond the season right there, a picture of that album is going to appear right here. Now, is that neat a thing? No. All right, did we have to do that? No. It's just something that I decided to do. That's all. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So the key takeaway from this, though, is right now, this data is being loaded from the database. That data is no longer being hard coded into the system the way that we had done that previously. So we've come in, we have installed Microsoft Studio, not Microsoft Studio, Microsoft SMM or S or whatever the heck they call it. All right, let's look and see what it's called again, because I always forget. Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. All right, right there, Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So we added that. I'm not going to go through that anymore, at least not right now, because we've talked about it. All right, we did all that. And then we came in and of course we created our project, etc. We got an empty project, but then we went in and we added those two tables. I tried to explain to you what a schema was and demonstrate it and the record. So I've given you all of the record information. All right. Okay. All right. We brought the database in, then we created the splash screen. I just went over the splash screen with you, what it is, etc. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. The only thing is, of course, we do have the ability to, when you're on the main, to come in here and to go from your splash screen to your main page by just doing this. All right. And then you can also go back from the other one. We'll look at that momentarily. That shouldn't be a surprise to you anymore. Remember when you're creating this name that you give it right here, and you use it right here, you can call that whatever you want. We could have called it FRM main form again if we wanted to. All right, but this is telling it to instantiate or create a new form. This is telling us to hide the existing form, which is our splash screen. And this is telling it to show our new main form. And you'll notice that if I go back to the main form, all right, and I click the splash screen, I'm just doing it in reverse. So let's go to splash screen. So again, creating that splash screen, hiding the main form, and showing the splash screen. So like I said, there shouldn't be any kind of a surprise or anything in there, to my knowledge. All right. And really, let's take a couple minutes and look at the code that's in here right now. I want you to be able to see all of it. I'm going to make this a little smaller so that you can see everything that's in here. All right, we'll do it like that. I know that's a little bit small there. All right, it's a little bit small, but I think that hopefully everybody can see it. So this is the splash screen. In the splash screen, I added, and I don't even think I need this, but I'm leaving it in there anyway, a global constant, all right, that has 16 elements in it. Those 16 elements are these right here. Now you might say there's only 15 albums. Why 16? Because the one that's there is the picture that goes in here. All right. All right. So I'm creating images, and what I did, and I had sent you this earlier. If you don't have it for some reason, let me know. But I sent you all 16 of the images that we're using. Okay. And there they are. So if I bring up any one of them, there's one of them, for example. All right. And then I went in, and you can grab any one. I'll just grab the first one here. And I said, copy full path. Now, when I go in there and I copy the full path, what is that? Well, let's drop it in right here. It's going to give me an error, but we'll remove it in a minute. But look what we have there. C:, users, etc., all that stuff. And as I mentioned, you can either put an @ at the beginning. All right. But after that, here we didn't use any @. So I just put it in double quotes. So there's a double quote. And there's a double quote. This is my array of images. Now, it doesn't like the fact that there's just a single backslash there, because that single backslash means, okay, it's trying to say, oh, is there a control U or a control J, etc. Those are basically trying to run a command on that. So just put another one in there. Notice as soon as I put in another one, those errors, they all will go away. And there's other ways that you can do this as well. I would suggest that you come in when you're doing this, and I'm going to get rid of this one. I don't need it anymore because it's duplication now. Do the first one, get this to work all the way up to right here, up to right there. Then copy that down 15 more times and then put in 00.jpg, 01.jpg, etc. But this is your array of images. So these are the images right here that go here and here. All right. Okay. Then we've got our main page. So that's the button that says go to main page. So where are we again? We're back here on our splash screen. I already explained this. I don't think we have to explain a label, but we've got all of this, and then we've got a main page and we've got an exit. Our main page, we already talked about it. It's going to the main page, and our exit is just our exit program or not. All right. Then when the program loads, this is what runs. When the program loads, this is what runs. So I'm saying in that first picture box, the image I want in there is I want you to go into that array of images and find the first one and do that all the way through the 16th one. All right. And then I did ask you to come in and add onto here, add a menu. So remember that when we run this, if I want to go to the main page, I can click here. But if I want to go to the main page, I can also click here. All right. And if I want to exit, I can click here, or I can click here. And I ask that you try to put in a help option here. All right. You can put in whatever you'd like to put in there. All right. I'm hoping, my hope is that you design your own splash screen, that you don't use mine. Now you might say, well, yeah, but yours is cool, or maybe you think it stinks. I don't know. But either way, I'd rather have you make your own. I'd like these to be a reflection of you, something you want to do. All right. So let's see. When you come in and you actually create those menu items, okay, how do you do all that? Well, remember, we talked about this before, that if you want to bring in a menu, let me go and view the toolbox here. Yes. All you have to do is go down to here and find the menu strip control, take it and drag it right up to the top there and let it go. Then every time you want to put something in here, so if I wanted another option, if I click here, I could put in another menu option. All right. Now let's just say I'm going to get rid of it right away, but let's assume here that I wanted to put in hello. Okay, that's a dumb name, etc. But you get the idea. Now I've got a hello option in there. And you will notice that along with that hello option that's in there, if I put my mouse over it, it gives it a name. It's called Hello Tool Strip Menu Item. All right. Now I don't want this in there anymore. All right. And I don't really remember if I can get rid of it or not, but looks like I did. Okay. So it's gone. All right. But this, I've renamed these. So I call this one main page menu item, help menu item, and exit menu item. And now that I look at, yeah, that's fine. All right. You can make cascading menus, so multi-level menus if you want to or need to. So I could have put everything all into one menu, just had a drop down and move this down to here and move this down to here, etc. All right. That should be, unless I've missed something, and I don't believe I have, but that should be everything that we covered as far as the splash screen goes. All right. So let's move over to the other form. All right, so let me just do a file save all here. And let's move over to the other form. All right, close this. And let's see. Okay, so this is our main form right here. Okay, so again, we are going to be doing some stuff between today and tomorrow. One thing I would like to do, and it's not hard and it won't be hard, all right, is I want us to come in and add a new picture box. So I'm just going to drag it right here. And I'm going to make it wider. And I want it to be a certain size where it's pretty much a perfect square here. All right. Now I like to, just so my stuff sticks out. Now notice it's called PB1. I'm going to call this, you can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to call it PB current album. All right. And I'm going to make it one shade darker so it sticks out so I can really tell what it is. All right. The other thing I want to do is I want to give it a size. So I'm going to click on here again. I'm going to come down to size. And now it's 289 by 323. No, I want it to be 300 by 300. Now it's a square. All right. And the reason for that is the images themselves that I gave you in this images folder are 300 by 300. All right. I just think that that works a little bit nicer. All right. Now, it's going to look a little funky when you first run the program and you come over here, because when we come here and we click main page, now we've got that. All right. Is that big a thing? In my opinion, no. All right. But again, that's something that we're going to add. We're also going to come in and eventually add down here. All right. We're going to add a very simple little group box that's going to have in there the ability for us to add a new record. And once we put that in, there'll be a button there to add new record. And then when we reload the data, that new record is going to be put in there. All right. And why am I telling you this? Because again, we're running through at least some of these CRUD operations. All right. That will allow us to create what we're doing now when we run this and we click here. That's a read. All right. By basically running a select. And we'll also have delete capability later. All right. I'm not going to go into this anymore right now than I just did. All right. Okay, so let me make sure that this is locked. It should be. I don't know, maybe for some reason it's not allowing me to lock it, but I thought you would lock that. Let me try to lock all of them and see if that locks it. No. Everything but the picture box looks like it's locked. That's locked, 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 and not locked. No, I'm not sure why, but it's not locked. Okay. The other stuff that we did was, again, and I mentioned this to you before, I'm going to go through this start to at 9 o'clock. I am going to take a short break for about 5 minutes. And I'm going to come back and then we'll continue on with more of today's stuff. All right. But in this load data, first thing is yesterday, I changed the name from load music data to load all music data. Did I have to do that? The answer is no. I could have left it load music data. But what I want to have happen is when we run this, let me close this. And for that matter, let me close this as well. What I want to have happen is when I click this button, I want all of the albums to load. If I put something into the text box here, if I put in, for example, Garth, and I click album search, it should only find those albums with the word Garth in them. And that's his debut album. I think that's all it would find. If I leave this empty and I click album search, it'll do the same thing as what would happen if I click load data. It'll show everything. All right. So again, that's what we're moving towards. All right. So with this load data, we come in here and remember what this is doing. This is something you have to start to understand. We are instantiating a new instance of the albums DAO class. So let's look at that albums DAO class that's right here. That's this. So what's happening? Well, the first thing is, and you should all be able to understand by now what this is. We talked about it yesterday, and that is we are creating our connection string. This is going to allow us to connect to the database. All right. And this right there, everything you see there in blue, when I got into SQL Server Management Studio and I brought it up, that's what appeared in that dialog box. And it was in blue at that time. All right. That's our data source. So we have to put an @ sign in here and then in double quotes, data source equals, and then we have to add that, whatever your data source is, then a semicolon, then initial catalog equals, followed by the name of our database. I've asked you to use GarthDB for the name of your database. And notice there's a blank space between initial and catalog, and there's very few blank spaces in here. Then another semicolon, then integrated space, security equals SSPI. Let's take a look and see what that is. Close this. And I'm going to put in here Microsoft SQL Server, and then I'm going to put in integrated security equals SSPI and hit enter. All right. It says specifying integrated security equals SSPI means you're going to manage permissions in the database on a per user basis. All right. That's a lot more information than you need to know. You're the only user, but this is something that would make more sense if we had a bunch of people using the same exact database, as opposed to each of us having our own copy of the database. All right. You want more, as it says, what is SSPI, which is Security Support Provider Interface. I always forget what it means, but you can take a look in there. All right. Okay. So we created our connection string. Okay. This right here, this get all albums. So everything from here to here, we're going to add stuff today, but everything that's in it, that's a method. That's calling the get all albums. This is the get all albums. That's the name of it. That's the name of the method, and it's going to return a list of albums. All right. And in a nutshell, what we're doing in here is we're telling the system to show us everything, to show us all albums. So you can read the comments. We start with an empty list. We attempt to connect to SQL Server. Now, probably in here, should have been probably in a try catch block. I mean, when stuff works, I don't want to go monkeying with it. All right. But What we're doing in here is we're attempting to connect to SQL Server, then we're opening up the connection, and then this is what we're going to tell it to search for. And that's going to be basically anything, with term. Well, there's nothing in term. So this is the same thing in this case. This is saying search for everything. So we give it a command by instantiating a new command object. We set the text for that command object to be select star from albums, where album name like term. All right. If you remember back in the day when we were doing this, and I guess I shouldn't have closed it, but when we came in here and you brought this up, and for instance, if I just come in here and I come into here, let's say, all right, and I say select star from albums, all right, as an example, and I run this. Well, I don't know why I'm not getting any data, anything back, but I'm not. But what you may have seen come up in the past was something that looks like this. All right, it says select star from albums, and then it says where one, which basically, and I've even told you, if you see all that stuff, you don't need these backticks. The backticks are only mandatory if the name in here has got a space in there. We don't have one. The where one is not mandatory either. That just says show us everything. And the reason I mentioned that to you is that's also what we're doing in here. All right. Now, one thing we didn't talk about yesterday, so I want to mention it right now, even if I go over our allotted break time for just a minute, and that is this. When you say an @ sign with something in here, you are creating what's called a parameter. The reason that that's important, it's not really that important in this example that's right here. But after the break, we're going to attempt to go in and write some more stuff where we want to make it work for that. We want to make it work so when we go in here and we click album search, if there's something in here, it searches just for that album or those albums that meet that criteria. All right. Oops, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that either. All right. So we had brought up, we were looking at this DAO, albums DAO. So let's go back to that. All right. And then we're telling the command to use the connection we've already established up here. Okay. Now this is probably the hardest part for most people to understand. It's what's in here. So let's quickly go over it. This using statement, and you can see it starts on line 33 and it ends on line 49. So it's about 15 to 20 lines long. It's basically, it's like doing another while loop. All right. Because it's telling us there to do an execute reader. What that means is, since it says reader on there, anything that gets returned, you will not be able to edit. Anything that gets returned, you will not be able to edit. The reason that that's important is we're using a select statement. And with a select statement, you cannot, that select is right here. You cannot change data with a select. It's not physically possible, legally possible, whatever you want to say. So we're creating right here something, an SQL data reader that's called reader. And we're telling it to execute reader. Here it says, as long as there are records to read. And what this is doing, all right, it's basically filling up all of the album information. Where is that information from? Right there. Well, it's just about it. Basically, it's kind of creating a new album item right here, a new album object right there. And how does it find out what a new album object is? It goes to the albums.cs. that we did the other day. That's why this is ID here. And it's also ID over here. The rest of the names are the same. We could have made them all different. We could have made them all the same. It really doesn't matter. All right. But hopefully you remember that the ID was an integer. The album name and the album artist were both strings or varchars in the database. The year was an integer, and the description and the URL. The description was text, which is just like a big string, and URL was also a string, again, in a varchar in that case. Then we're saying, hey, remember, when we get done, we're returning this called albums to return. So what we're doing here is we're adding the album that we just grabbed from the database to albums to return. And we do that as long as there's albums. So it's going to go through that 15 times, once for each album. Then once we're done, we close our connection to the server and we return that albums to return. All right. Now, one last thing, and then we're going to take a break. And that is if I go back to my program, my main form, the magic is happening right here. Because if you notice in that line, it's in blue there, line 27, it's setting my data source to albumsdao.get all albums. After the break, we're going to add another thing in here because right now, let me close this. Right now for this album search, we're not really doing anything. We got this thing in here that's empty. See that it says load search music data, where the other one was load all music data. All right. But we want to have something happen when we click this. And basically, it'll be very similar in nature to what we have done in here. The command will change. All right. But most of the stuff will be the same. We do want to write two different routines because we're not doing the exact same thing. It's getting one versus getting many, for lack of better words. All right. Okay, so let's see. I'm following this along here with my set of notes that I have here. So give me just a second. All right. So this is where I wanted to be for right now. It is 9:04. All right. I'm just going to take 5 minutes and come back, 6 minutes, I guess, and come back at 9:10. And then we're going to write this and try to make the one work for doing a search. All right. So I'll be back in just a few minutes. right, so I spent the first hour reviewing and getting us to hopefully where, we're to the point where everybody is caught up, for lack of better words. Okay. All right. Now, what I want to do is two things here. First, I want to go back to my main form. And in album search here, okay, before where we did this in load all music data, we had this. Okay. And I think, okay, so that was in load all music data, right? And we called it from our load button. Now we've got our album search, all right, where we're calling load search music data. And I'm going to copy this in, but it's going to have to change a little bit. We don't want to get all albums right now. We only want to get selected albums. All right. Let's call it get, I don't know. We'll call it search albums. That may not be the best name, but that's what we're going to call it. Okay. Now it's giving me that error because we don't have that written yet. We will write that in just a moment. Okay. But we've got everything else in there. Now, the other thing I have to do, let's see. Okay. Yeah. So load search. Yeah, that should be okay. We've got it from there. And I'm just looking in here. So we've got album search. Okay. And we're going to need to also call that from here, load search music data from here. There we go. Now, this doesn't exist yet, so we're going to write that right now. All right. And try to keep it as simplistic as possible. So it's get search albums. Okay. I'm going to come into my album DAO, and right underneath where I've got this public list album get all albums, right underneath that. All right, I'm going to drop this in, but it's going to give me an error because I want it to look just like this, but have a different name. So let me come down here. Now let me put that in here. And paren, and this. Now it's going to give me an error right now because I'm supposed to be returning a list of albums, and I don't have that yet. But if I jump back now into my main form and I come in here under album search, notice that that error there is gone because it is a viable name right now. Okay, so let me jump back here, and we're going to have to make a bunch of changes, but let me grab everything that I've got here. This is from the get all. So I'm grabbing everything I've got in the get all. I'm copying it to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it in here. All right. Now, that's not correct, but I just do want you to see that if I do a file save all now, and if I run the program again, it will run. It will not give me an error. And now when I go to the main page, if I click album search, it's just as though I clicked load data. So if I click this, it shows me everything. That's not what I want unless I do leave this blank. But if I come in here and I put in something and I click album search, I want it to just give me the stuff that meets that criteria. But it gave me a starting point, for lack of better words. All right. All right. So, and there's not really a whole heck of a lot in here that I'm going to have to change. All right. So I still can call it albums to return, etc., because these are two different routines. So that's okay. So I'm looking in here to see, yeah, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. All right. So all that stuff that you've seen in here, everything that you've seen in here, all right, is okay, except, okay, let's see. When we call this, it's going to have to change a little bit. And what do I mean when I say it's going to have to change a little bit? All right. This is going to, in here, this load or get search albums, it's going to require a parameter. What parameter? It's going to require whatever we put in here. Now that can be empty, but normally at least it won't be empty. So I'm going to put a string in here and I'm going to call it search. Now that's going to blow up some stuff. Why? Because now when I jump back into here, it gets mad again because there's nothing I passed. Well, excuse me, what do I want to pass? TXT album search dot text. That's what I want to do. So I'm telling it, let me stop the run here. I'm telling it that when you run this, take whatever is in here, if there is anything, and I call album search, and I want you to ferret it based on that. Now, I could be wrong here, but I'm thinking at least, I don't think I have anything else to put in here. So let's look. I'll see if it works. First of all, just let me do a file save all. All right. And second of all, let me find something. Let me look at the data and see something that we've got here. So let's see. There's the word the. Oh, wait a minute. I want albums. I'm sorry. So let's see. The wind, oh, there's a bunch of thes in there. So let's try that. I may have left something out. I would never do that intentionally, but I could have accidentally left something out. So let me do a save all and let me go back to the run here. All right. Now, to check this out, I'm going to go to the main page. If I put nothing in, it should show me everything. And it does. That's good. All right. But now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in and I'm going to tell it to search. Well, something's wrong. All right. Because, for instance, in pieces here does not have the word the in it. So I am missing something. So I'm going to go back to my regular notes. I've got a list of cliff notes, cheat notes, whatever you want to call them. All right. And I want to make sure that, because I want this to work. All right. So let's go back here to album search and let's take a look at everything that's in here. So we call load search music data. There it is. All right. And I believe that's all okay. We called get search albums. And we passed it txt album search.text. That all looks okay. We associate it with a data grid view that we're using. All right, that's okay. All right, so what? All right, so it appears as though the problem is somewhere in this routine here. So let me take another look at it. All right, and make sure that I didn't miss anything, which again, with me is always possible. So private list, album, and we call it, it's our get search albums. That's fine. We could have called it whatever we wanted to. And I already see where I'm missing. No, maybe not. Term. Okay. I don't want this in here anymore. This, I don't need this term. Now I've got to be using search. I'm still telling it there's nothing in there. So that's what's wrong. I need this search. And what I want to say is plus search right there. That's search. All right. And it's giving me an error. It says it does not exist in the current context. Yeah, it does. It's right there. Oh, because I spelled it wrong. Search. There we go. And this is going to be wrong too. It's not going to be like term, but we'll fix it all in just a second. We're very close to having this work, but the logic in here is the same. And I wanted you to realize that, again, the logic is the same in here. So this, instead of being at term, will be at search. Now, does it work now? We're going to find out right now. I'm going to do a file, save all. I'm going to run this. And let's do it the other way. So I'll go to main page and I'm going to put in the and do an album search. Oh, okay. Must declare the scalar variable at term. Well, I still didn't, I'm missing something still. So let's see. So somewhere in here, I'm still using term. There, that should have been search. My error. This is the kind of mistake that you're going to make as a programmer. That's why, as always, what you should be doing, what I should be doing. In fact, that should be search phrase, I believe. All right. Now, is write a little code, then test it. Write a little more code, and then test it. All right. So let's see, search. Actually, that should be search, I believe, and not search phrase, but we'll find out. So again, let me do one more file, save all. Let me run it. The good news is I'm not getting the output I'm expecting, but the program's running. That's always good news. So well, look, rope and the win, beyond the season, the chase, Garth Brooks, the life of Chris Gaines, the magic of Christmas. And here's an interesting one, Christmas together. But the word together has the word the in it. So if I wanted all the ones, do we have any albums with the letter U in them? And we've got Gunslinger and Fun. All right, so 2 out of the 15. If I put nothing in there, I still get everything. Fantastic. So we've now been able to go in and implement loading all data and doing a search for some specific criteria. All right, so that's all good. All right, so what do we want to do next? Well, we've added that picture box. All right, and let's make this work. So if I put my mouse on here, it shows the Rope in the Wind album right there. All right, and it's really not a lot to do in order to do that. Just so you know this, there's not really a lot that we have to do in order to do this. Okay, so let's talk about what we do have to do. All right, so everything that we do, we want it to be based off of what's in here. Well, what is in here? All right, well, what's in here is, this is the data grid view. All right, so let me close this. The first thing I want to do, and you don't have to do this, this is all a matter of personal preference and taste, but I want to come into this data grid view here, and I want to make it so it's about the same size as that. So they're pretty close to the same size. All right, I kind of like that. Now I could move this up. I like it right where it is. I think it's just fine. And I'm going to lock everything back into place. All right, but this is the data grid view, and the data grid view is called DGV for data grid view, DGV albums. All right, and one thing about a data grid view is the data grid view has got associated with it a click routine. Now, I'm not sure if that's the default, but I'm going to double click on this, and there it is. It's cell content click. All right. Well, I want to see what else is in there. So actually, I want to get rid of this one because I don't think that's the one we're going to want, but we'll see in just a moment. So let me go back to here, to my design. I'm going to click on here. All right. And there is a cell content click. All right. But I don't want that one. So I'm going to remove this that I just put in here. Oops. Try that again. So I'm going to remove this. Come on. Try it one more time. I'm going to highlight all of this and I'm going to hit delete. That should now have removed it from here and it's gone. All right. Now, how do you find out about this stuff? In other words, what I want to do in here is I don't want on here, I don't want the cell content click. I want the cell click. That's the one I want. So how do I know that? Basically, it was a matter of Googling, all right, to get what I needed to get. All right. And I should mention to you too, because it stupidly did not previously mention this. And that is, talking about Google, that if I do come back in here and I say how to use parameters in a SQL server query, all right, there's a lot of really good material that's in here. All right, using this, I don't remember if this is the one, but one of these I took a look at, and some of it in here you won't even understand because they talk about stored procedures and stuff we just have no time to talk about. But one of these articles, I don't think it was this one, I think it was one from the Microsoft documentation, all right, but was pretty good. Always a good place to get started in here if you're confused or something doesn't work is to look in Stack Overflow. All right, here's Tech Community at Microsoft, how and why to use parameterized queries. All right. Again, some of the stuff that's in here, you're going to look at and you're like, well, that didn't really help. Yeah, I get it. But part of being able to do this stuff and really understand it is to be able to Google and look around. Here's using parameterized queries with SQL data source. Usually the learnmicrosoft.coms are good. Okay. And they do go through it. And there is the @ sign. So I'm not saying that you're going to go through this and become an expert on it. That would be silly to make that assumption. But if you want more information or more detailed information than what I'm giving you, it's a place you can start. All right. Okay. So let's see here. All right. So I'm going to come in here, and as I just mentioned to you, it's going to be in this cell click. We'll see whether or not it works. It's only 4 or 5 lines of code. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take a look at what's in here. It's a little bit different than what we've seen when we were working with buttons. I mean, look, a button has got an object sender and an event args E. This has got an object sender and a data grid view cell event args E. Well, buttons, this is the button you clicked. This is which data grid element you clicked. All right. So I have to let the system know, for lack of better words here, I have to let the system know, all right, who my sender is. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a data grid view. And just to keep it simple, I'm going to call it DGV for data grid view. I'm creating this in code. You're never going to see this on the screen. You are never going to see this on the screen. I am creating something in code right here. All right. So I've got this, and then I'm going to say equals. This is going to give me an error. I want to say it equals sender. Sender. Okay, it's giving me an error, and it's because I'm trying to mix apples and oranges, and it's saying this is a data grid view, but sender, which is right there, it's an object, and they're not the same exact type. So I have to cast this and say here data grid view. I have to cast it into that, and notice now it works. All right, that's first thing. Then next, I have to let it know which one of these things that are in here I clicked. All right. And as far as what's in there, okay, each thing in the data grid view is going to have an index in it. It's going to have an index number in it. We'll see that in just a moment. So what I could do, okay, just to show you this, I'm going to say here int, well, let's just call it like row clicked, and we'll set that equal to dgv dot current row dot index. All right, and now I'm going to add a line here, but I'm going to remove it in just a minute. I'm just going to put a message box dot show in here, and it says you clicked on row number plus, and we'll say here row clicked, dot toString, and I'll just put a little comment here that says FYI for, for your information. So what do we got here? Message equals plus row. Oh, that's toString has got paren. That's why I'm getting the error. All right. And as we always have done, we'll put in here a message box buttons dot OK. And it's giving me an error because I don't have a comma there. There we go. OK. And we'll have a message box icon of information. What I want to have happen is if I click on row 15, I want it to give me that number. If I click on row 8, I want it to give me that number, etc. So let's see if this works. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. So let's run this. Main page. Let's bring them all up. So we'll load everything. Now I'm going to click here, there. And it says you clicked on row 7. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It appears to be working. If I do the last one, it should say 14. And it does. All right. So right as of right now, we've got it working. Well, that's fine. That's all fine. But that's not what we want in there. We want in here, we want it to show that album. All right. So let's do that right now. Okay. So I'm going to leave this in here, but I'm going to comment it out. All right. There. If I wanted to go back and look at something again, I'd be able to. So I'm going to say here string image URL equals DGV, our data grid view, dot rows, dot row clicked. Okay, right there. Okay, dot cells. Five dot, I think this is correct, but we'll find out in a minute. Dot value dot toString. Value dot toString. All right, and then finally our picture box PB current album. No, we don't want a dot text. We want a dot load. We want to load into there the image URL. Now I might have put a wrong number in there, but we'll find out in just a moment. All right. So let's do a file, save all. All right. And let's come in here. Let's go to the main page. Let's load our data and let's choose the one with Chris Gaines. It's got a different picture right there. And nothing happened. Oh, I know. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I forgot for the ID field, we have to move over. We're telling it to get it from here, which is our URL field. All right. So we're telling it that we want it from here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those actually start with 1. All right. That's why I'm off by 1. So it's trying to get it from here and it's not finding anything. So let's change that from a 5 to a 6. Let's stop the run. Let's save this. And then let's run it again. All right, main page, loading. Let's try a different one. All right, we'll try Beyond the Season. Okay, it's okay. It's giving us an error and it's saying system argument out of range exception. Well, then that's telling me that should have been 5, but it's not finding what I thought it would be finding. Oh, we're going to debug this yet. So I'm going to look at all of this. This is in my cell click. That's correct. Data grid view, Sullivan args. That's correct. Data grid view DGV equals data grid view sender. That's correct. Int row clicked equals DGV dot current row dot index. That is correct. String image URL. Again, we can call this anything we want. That is equal to DGV dot rows of row clicked dot cells. And I think that should be 5, but it's not finding it, and I don't know why. dot value dot toString. And then our PB dot current album, which is, I think that's what we call this one. PB current album, that's what it is. Dot load image URL. All right, I want to try it one more time. I don't know what the problem is. File, save all. We know that it's grabbing it because we saw that in the message box. So again, load our data. It says the remote server returned an error, 403 forbidden. Well, that's interesting. View details. Well, I want to grab this. It's not letting me. Let's see, let me try that again. I'm going to grab this. And we're going to try to see if we can debug this. All right. So let me come back to here. And I'm going to say, I don't know if that's a C# error or a Visual Studio error, but I'm going to say here, try them both. C# Visual Studio error. Okay. All right. It says this code works fine, except sometimes it causes a 500 error. The exact error is, and it shows this, it's going to be different than mine, but let's see what it says here. I notice the error occurs when the biggest file is loaded. All other files are less than this, and I get no exception. I don't know why this happens. Can someone tell me why? All right. On reading the question, I was suspicious this has to do or could be connected to setting the keep alive to false. All right, I don't have a keep alive. Looking on SO, this question references the same problem and points to it here. Well, I'm going to bring that one up in a second, but issue on this thread. Okay, I'm wondering if it's possible here that the reason it's doing this has nothing to do with this at all, but it has to do with the fact that in our album DAO, we are closing our connection here. What I'm going to try to see if it works is just to take that right now, okay, and I'm going to leave that connection open. This may do absolutely nothing. I may get the same error. And I am. All right. Well, the good news is that isn't what it is. All right. Bad news is I, as of right now, don't have an idea of what the problem is. Let's take a look at this. See, they're doing something totally different than what we're doing in here. Well, this is from Microsoft. Again, they're doing something totally different in here. Well, whatever it was on here, everybody's having the same problem. I'm actually wondering if it's possible that this is some kind of a rights issue. What I mean by that is this. Let me close a bunch of this that I've got running here, that I've got open, just because there's a ton of stuff open right now. All right. But I'm wondering when we are going in here, remember that when we are going in here, let's see, because I just in my mind right now, I just thought of a possible way to fix this, but I don't know if it'll work or not. So let me run this. And when I run it and we come here and we go to here, the album URL that it's finding is right here, right? We already talked about that. There it is. All right. And for some reason, it doesn't seem to like something that's in here. I don't know what, but I'm wondering if I replace that album URL that is in there, if I replace that with the actual images that are in my image folder, if that would fix the problem. And I don't know if it will or not. All right. Trying to figure out a fast way of doing this. And I hate making a bunch of changes in here just in case it doesn't work. All right, but I'm thinking literally just off the top of my head right here. I'm just really surprised that it didn't work. And I did, of course, I didn't want to do that. I did. All right. It is letting me know the right row. And as far as what's in there, looking at my data from before, yeah, that's 5. We start at 0. That URL should be right there. There's a lot of things that this could potentially be. Well, this isn't going to help any, but what I'm going to tell it to do here is I'm going to comment this line out. And I'm going to bring this in here, but I'm going to uncomment all of this. But I want it to say the value of image URL is, and that's what I'm going to put in here is image URL, because I want to see what it's actually getting here. So this won't blow up. The program won't blow up. I'm not going to get any output other than this message box output. So let me do a file save all and run it again. And again, we'll just pick out any one. So I'll pick out Scarecrow here. The value of the image URL is, well, you can see what it is here. I'm going to try putting that in there. So how do we do this? Like I said, I'm just trying stuff here. So https://upload Wikipedia. It's Wikimedia. .org/Wikipedia /en/0/01/Garth Scarecrow .jpg. And I want to go and I want to try to put that into, close that and close this. I can leave this running. It's not going to hurt anything. I want to see if I put this into the browser, if it brings up that image. It is. So I almost think it has to be some kind of a permission thing, because I'm getting a forbidden error. I've not seen that before. But it is finding it, and it's finding the right one too, because that does say Scarecrow, a little hard to see, but it's finding it. All right. So what I'm going to do, sorry about this, but I'm going to stop lecturing and I'm going to try to track this error down, and this is where we will pick it up tomorrow. So tomorrow, what I'm going to do is review the new material we went over today. Then hopefully I'll have a fix to this. And then we're going to learn how we can go and add a new record to this. All right. It's actually going to be probably a little bit easier than you might even think it is. But we're going to, again, we're taking this nice and slow. All right. And that's really what I planned for the entire week, was to get to this point. All right. So you may have quite a bit of time this week where you're going to be able to go in and put this stuff in yourselves. All right. So I'm going to stop right now and we'll pick it up tomorrow. Thanks.